Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me and see me okay. My name is Paqui Paredes. I'm the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Western Washington University. And I want to welcome you all to our third Western Horizons, a public webinar series that features faculty, students, and alumni of the college, and that it's organized in collaboration with the Alumni Office. We are meeting virtually today as we do much of our day-to-day work due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of you and all of us whom you will see on your screen are located in Bellingham and in tribal lands. So I will start this event with a land acknowledgement, even though we are indeed meeting virtually. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather today on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, which in Bellingham are the Lummi Nation and the Nooksack tribe, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Thank you for joining me in this moment of gratitude. I will now pass on the baton to Dr. Mark Geisler, who's the Associate Dean for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. He will introduce our speakers today and will moderate the panel. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy our webinar today.
Thank you, Paqui, and thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you gathering here to celebrate a wonderful institution that we've had in the college and in the English department for quite some time. I'm going to first introduce the three panelists briefly, and then each panelist is going to have about 5 minutes to speak to us. And then following that, we're going to have question and answer, starting with some questions that we received ahead of time, and then layering in questions that we receive. And you can submit through the question and answer function that I'll be looking at. So please, with any questions you have, go ahead and put those in. Also, we're going to be sending out an email in a couple of days with a recording and a thank you. That recording will have a recaptioned video. The video on Zoom that's live here can be interesting, but the recaptioned video will be much better. It's a pleasure to introduce Suzanne Paola Antoinetta. She's a professor of English who teaches courses in creative writing with a specialty in creative nonfiction, in addition to courses for women, gender, and sexuality studies. Suzanne's forthcoming books are The Terrible Unlikelihood of Our Being Here and The Devil's Castle. There's so many other publications that she has, so many wonderful writings. And so that's a brief introduction. Dulani is a graduate of Western's MFA program in writing who served as the 2019-2020 Assistant Managing Editor of the Bellingham Review and continues to serve as a collaborative editor. He's a Pushcart nominated multi-genre writer, and he has publications in some wonderful places like the Alaska Quarterly Review. Stephen Haynes is an MFA student currently at Western Washington University and is right now the managing editor of the Bellingham Review. His creative work has been shortlisted at the Epoch Press and has appeared or is forthcoming at the Creative Colloquy and Bright Flash, and he's presented in a showcase at Western. Thank you so much, and we'll start off with Suzanne.
Everybody, and thanks for being here. I'm going to start out with a little bit of history of the Bellingham Review and then talk about my 6 years as editor and what we've been doing in that time. The Bellingham Review was actually started by a former faculty member named Knut Skinner in his garage. It was the Garage Band journal, and when he retired, he wanted to gift it to the university, and so it was taken by the English department. With some strictures, we are self-supporting, So we are not taking away resources from the department or the university. We operate on our own. Be lovely to get more resources, but that's how we work it. So after we acquired it, it became much more national, and I became the editor 6 years ago. And I know a lot of overseas writers. I have a lot of international connections. I worked in Hong Kong for a while. So what felt to me really natural was to bring in international writing and translation. It's not the whole issue. Sometimes in our print issues, it'd be maybe a quarter would be writing and translation, but or writing overseas, that's in English, we do that as well. But I just wanted to get that international focus. And so we've done an international folio in every print issue in the spring, starting with writing from Hong Kong. And our folios are somewhat themed. So the Hong Kong folio dealt with the Umbrella Revolution or Occupy Hong Kong. It went by both names. And it's tragically prescient of what has happened since. And we've gotten work from Israel, from Palestine, from the Philippines. I've also, since I work in a jail, run sections of poetry by the incarcerated, but much of the journal is just work that comes in through our regular submission system, and that's wonderful too. So we're representing the country. We do get writing from the area. We're international, and that's really exciting. And one of the things that I really brought to it was the feeling that since we can't pay our writers, we're really going to be the people that go to bat for our writers. And we've seen some wonderful synergy. And also we've seen our writers just, get wonderful acclaim. And that feels great. One of our writers, Sheikha Halawi, is a Bedouin Palestinian woman with an amazing story. She came from a village that the land is known as an unrecognized village because of the situation with Israel. And we published her work. I think we were her second US publisher. And then she won this amazing award called the Al Mutaka, which is a $20,000 prize for the best short fiction in Arabic. So that was amazing. And she actually came and visited a class I taught that Stephen was in, which was really an incredible experience. And I also published a writer named Hawad, who's his cultural group is the Tuareg from the Sahara. And we were a fairly early English publisher of his. And I introduced him to Kwame Dawes, who curates a poetry series called the African Poetry Series, who took his book. So we've been good yentas. But I work really closely with my grad students. Stephen and I meet every week, and we're often joined by the assistant managing editor. And so all of our decisions about what to accept are very collaborative decisions, and what direction we want to go in. These are also very collaborative decisions. So what I've kind of brought to this is more of an international focus and more work done that's outside of what comes in through the normal submission process. So I've also done kind of written symposia. I did one where disabled authors kind of talked about literary tropes of disability and how they get kind of caught in those tropes. That was really great. But I mean, I'm always excited about everything we publish. And yeah, it's amazing. It's got a lot of reach, and I'm always really excited about it. And we have a new feature that Dulani will talk about that actually made it to the New York Times, which was really exciting. So I'll pass the baton.
Thank you, Suzanne. It was wonderful to get that initial view of the close work and collaboration that happens with the graduate students and the faculty working on the journal, which is definitely a hallmark. Stephen. I'm sorry, Dulani, my mistake.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for organizing this. This is wonderful. Yeah, so I will speak to two things in particular. One is my own experience and time as assistant managing editor of the Bellingham Review. I had that role in for the 2019-2020 school year. I graduated from the MFA program in June of 2020. And the other thing I'm going to talk about, as Suzanne mentioned, is resilient Pieholes. So to start off with the AME experience, I can't say enough positive things about it. It was really wonderful to be a part of a literary journal as a staffer, to really see the process from start to finish, to participate in and practice skills around copy editing, around social media strategy, around even nominating people for pushcart prizes was amazing to play that role. Reading all of the work that comes through for the Bellingham Review is really great practice. Being a good writer means being a good reader, and so training our eyes, having this sort of back end experience of what we also ourselves go through in terms of putting work out in the world and what happens to it. It's like, oh, this is what happens. There's a whole team working really hard to read through submissions and make these selections. And I think, for me, it also marked a really clear moment in my writing career, to have a title like assistant managing editor and to represent the Bellingham Review at the largest writers conference in the country, AWP, and to solicit writing from writers with that title. I think it just shows people that you're here, you're a writer, you're an editor. The nature of your relationship with people expands because your roles are expanding in the literary community. And so it's just a really amazing opportunity that is, I think, one of the hallmarks of Western's MFA program, for sure. I think it's a huge drive to the program. And for Resilient Pieholes in particular, that was an amazing collaboration for Suzanne to be super open to me wanting to pitch a folio and to teach me essentially how that works. She taught me to think about, have people in mind, so that as we put this together, we can actually imagine the type of writers we're thinking about or would want to feature. And that was really exciting. I had come up with a few different ideas, and one of them was food. And Suzanne had this brilliant container for it to give it a structure of to include a recipe in the call for submissions, as well as a 1 to 2 page meditation on specifically the times we're living in. What are folks cooking in times of COVID? What are they thinking about? And we tried to make it really inviting in terms of, in our call for submissions, there was an example around, you could talk about Oreos and milk, or you could talk about something really elaborate. However you're taking care of yourself right now, there's a story there. For me in particular, I think what I was really excited to add to this was there was a line in the call for submissions that I knew would speak to the people I had in mind, and that was food as sustenance, comfort, ancestors, family, memory, intimate. Because I knew people who wrote about food, but they did it from a very political angle, from a disability justice lens, from someone who identifies as being unmothered and sort of learning how to take care of oneself, having been on her own since she was 13. So there were just people I knew who brought such rich layered textures and political lenses to the issues that I knew would be able to speak to COVID with a depth and a politics that I wanted to uplift.
Thank you, Delani, for that beautiful story of your kind of a coming of age as a writer with an editor, and how they informed each other, and how that particular section of the Bellingham Review came about. And now, Stephen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this panel, and thanks for having me. As Mark mentioned, I am the current managing editor of Bellingham Review. So I kind of am the person that oversees the whole team. The journal, as we kind of mentioned before, is run entirely by the MA, MFA cohort, which is a very kind of special thing. It's a really collaborative, team-oriented environment in which everyone can really participate if they so choose. The assistant managing editor and the managing editor position are done by application for first year students who are often readers their first year. So that's generally how the breakdown sort of works. The first year students in the program, whether they be MA or MFA students, master's degrees or master's in fine arts degree students, have the opportunity to be readers for us, which means that they're kind of the first eyes on everything that we get when we in our general submissions period, which begins just right before fall quarter each year, September 15th, and ends December 1st. So we get a wide array of things, as Suzanne mentioned, from all over the country as well as internationally. And we accept work for that period of time in fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry, and hybrid work. So we get a very wide array of things, some really wonderful stuff. And our first year students are the ones who kind of look at all those things first, a big pile of submissions, and they collaborate on Submittable, which is the platform that we currently use, and figure out what the strengths are of a piece, if it's worthy of being kind of kicked up. And the people that they pass those things along to are our genre editors, who are second year students in either the MA or the MFA cohort. And they are generally people who are readers the first year. They kind of have the opportunity to then manage the readers below them. And then sort of in the hierarchy, I have the assistant managing editor, as Yulani was last year, and Keegan Lawler is this year, and the managing editor, who is me and was Ali Spikes last year. And so we kind of all as a team collaborate on Submittable and at Zoom, well, in the time of COVID, in Zoom meetings that used to be in person, and discuss the strengths of pieces, what we think is worthy of being in the journal, and that goes into kind of our queue. And then as soon as our general submissions period ends each year on December 1st, our contest submissions begin, which we do a $1,000 prize for fiction, creative nonfiction, and poetry every year. And some really wonderful stuff comes in for that. We are right in the process of that right now. Actually, the contest submissions end this coming Monday, March 15th. And so we're in the process of kind of going through all those, which is just a really, really cool kind of thing. One thing that I really wanted to kind of play up about the journal is that the experience is just such a cool, as I said, it's such a cool team-oriented environment. It's a diverse group of people. You know, each year it's roughly, you know, ends up being maybe in the neighborhood of 20 people all kind of working together. And the experience that you get from the review is just so interesting because we do have MA and MFA students. For the MFA students, it's really a unique experience because you kind of get to pull back the veil a little bit and see what a journal looks like from the other side and sort of get that editorial experience, because you are, as Dulani mentioned, you are working with pieces where you are collaborating with authors, talking about copy editing, you're proofreading as a group, you're learning about a lot of really valuable skills, and you're also kind of learning about some really interesting kind of tricks and things to be aware of that are really beneficial to people who are trying to get their own work published. And in addition to that, even if members of the review are not writers themselves, which oftentimes they may not be, they might just be master's students who are very avid readers, it's also an incredibly beneficial team and project management experience to be involved with the review. It really is an established journal that's been around since the 70s. And it's just such a cool kind of environment to be a part of. And you learn such valuable skills that really translate and go beyond just the sort of traditional literary values that you might first think of. So I think that's a very special thing.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm glad to know the 70s are now an established period. So I really enjoyed your under the hood view of what the functioning of the journal actually looks like, and it really brings into view a lot of exciting activities. I remember how exciting and kind of a little overwhelming it could feel when all the submissions for contests came in and everybody was starting to go through them. And so thank you so much for your work on that. Suzanne, I mean, you let us know that a new direction that you've shepherded with the journal is to internationalize it more, as well as diversify the way that submissions are made, that there's different ways submissions are made. And one of the questions that we had turned in ahead of time was about what do you think would be the goals that you would like the Bellingham Review to aim for in the next several years? Maybe what are students thinking or saying, and what are you hearing? What are you hearing from authors? What's your kind of view of what's happening with the Bellingham Review and maybe with creative writing journals?
Yeah, well, I'm stepping down after next year. So actually my hope will be the next person will come in and just have like a really exciting but somewhat different vision than I do. So that is my hope, that it will continue and be very always current. I mean, adding hybrid as a category was a very important thing that we did a few years ago, because hybrid work now is so important. And one of the first folios I did, I called the kinetic page. And it was people doing avant-garde work. I don't like that term, but I'll use it. That was off the page. I mean, one was a poem that was also superimposed over a Charlie Chaplin video that was going, and, you know, over and over again on a loop. And so those authors wrote about what they were thinking, what they were doing, what their aesthetic was. So I just hope we keep pushing in that direction. I've been blessed. I got some poems from a translator who translates poetry from Cuban poets. Just, I don't know, 6 months ago, Stephen might remember. And so they were wonderful poems. And so we all had our collaborative meeting and we chose some to accept. And then I went back to the translator and I said, hey, do you know other people translating exciting Cuban poets? And then she connected me with other people. And now we have, I think, about 5 different poets. So I think I'm positioned to do really well with that area of work in translation and just international work. And I hope we continue to be globalized. But I also hope that the next person will keep pushing in other directions. So, and we do really, really pay attention. We all have, I mean, these are amazing writers, I have to say. Stephen and Dulani are amazing writers and readers. And so we're all always kind of looking for those questions. What are people talking about right now? And can we organize that into something that's kind of an online or print issue, kind of almost like a written symposium with creative work? And I think Pieholes is a little bit of that, which is actually online. So if you want to read it, it's bhreview.org, and it's on the top of the page, the splash page. It is kind of that. It ended up being a really interesting combination of very playful and very serious. And so that was kind of trying to hear what was going on during the pandemic. And, you know, Dulani was amazing. And the brilliant title, Resilient Pieholes, was Dulani's. So I guess that's my answer. It's not, I think having plans would actually maybe not something you want to do excessively, because you do want to always be responding to what you're hearing and seeing.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. I agree, especially with what we've been going through, a little playful attitude in addition to the serious attitude is something we very much need and nurture and to appreciate in each other and in our art for sure. Dulani, we've been talking about this resilient Pieholes. I find that really fascinating. Resilience, definitely a resource I've been wanting to cultivate in the past year. How did you come up with that? How did you come up with that topic? How did it develop? And could you take us into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when Suzanne invited me over to her yard, and we were safely socially distanced and chatting about the theme and the structure, and And then from there, I took a stab at drafting the call, and I think really what Suzanne just captured so beautifully, that sort of mix of playful and serious comes through in that title. I think there's something universal about food, but there's something that lends itself to being so specific and sophisticated. It can be a sophisticated lens with depth as well. And so the voice of the people who submitted in that first batch, especially, had such a nice mix of these tones. From Stacey Evans' piece, where it's just so you can empathize with what she says in terms of like whatever I can throw in and what's easy to make right now. I'm so tired of this pandemic, right? And or Chaya's piece where she misses glamour and dressing up, and she makes herself a fancy cocktail. And so so there's different levels of being able to identify with these sentiments that people are expressing. Anna talking about missing her parents, but also talking about wildfires going on in Oregon, and how some of us, on the West Coast, were experiencing layer upon layer of circumstances that were just extremely difficult. And to be able to read these and have that empathy, as well as sort of learn from what folks are going through, was great. I mean, so I think it was just a combination of wanting there to be depth, but wanting to be open to what folks want to bring.
Mm-hmm. There's something about the preparation of food and how preparation is so much a part of who we are, and it's a place both of creativity and constraints in a number of ways, I think. And COVID has really altered that in ways both that offer challenges and opportunities. Are there kind of some of the, from the different submissions and maybe from your own experience, what are some of the opportunities that have opened up with food and eating that COVID has created?
I think that, obviously the very large bulk of what we do is not Resilient Pieholes, much as we love it. And we don't really do, food as a focus other than that. I did want to throw in, though, that Stephen has been a really big part of this too. He helps me select, he helps me edit. He solicited one of our previous writers, Sri Iyer, and a woman who's Malaysian but lives in Melbourne and has also lived in China. So her food perspective and COVID perspective is really international. Yeah, so kudos to Stephen too. I don't know, Stephen, if you want to jump in on that or talk about sort of other stuff that we get and how you think about it.
I mean, I think that the work that we continue to get and that we have already received for Resilient Pieholes just continues to be like really astounding and wonderful, and like we've kind of been all talking about, both playful and can also just like deeply move you. Some of the stuff that writers talk about in these pieces, and I think food in and of itself, as Dulani kind of talked about, is just such a deeply personal thing, and can be so entwined in someone's identity and their culture. And then kind of seeing how, I think that in and of itself is already a very interesting lens, I think. And then when you throw COVID into the mix and kind of what we've all been going through for this past year, and how maybe that lens has been altered in different ways. And, sometimes people in these pieces choose to talk about very fun sort of things about that, and, very playful sort of things. But oftentimes, even in those playful moments, there is a core to it that is very insightful and very moving. And I think really just speaks to how just like wonderfully diverse a topic like that can be, especially in the hands of some very like deft writers.
Question that we received beforehand, which perhaps fits in here well now, is what is it when you're doing the contest, let's say, and you're talking with each other as people are reading, because there's multiple people reading, right? The entries to the contest, for poems, for nonfiction, for fiction. What is it, and this can be, I think, hard to typify and take maybe a little bit of nuance to unpack, because it's not one simple thing, of course. But the question that we received is, what is it that you're looking for in submissions?
Stephen, why don't you take that, and I'll follow your lead.
Man, we talk about this constantly. It's such an interesting thing. I think this is one of the aspects that is really so cool about being a part of the journal, is kind of getting to see things that you might not have really thought about, especially if you are a writer who is trying to put your work out there, seeing the other side of the curtain. Because yes, of course, I think in general, we're always looking for, originality. We're always looking for diverse voices. We're always looking for some of those core things. But there can also be times where, in very funny ways, we might get, a couple of different stories that are all talking about, cats or something. And even though we really love this one story, it incorporates a cat, and we're thinking to ourselves, well, we can't put 3 pieces that all talk about cats in one issue. That's kind of strange. And so we might end up like saying, well, that might be a little bit of a tiebreaker if we were on the fence about a piece. And we were kind of thinking, some of us really like it, some of us aren't so sure about it. If it has one of those things in the mix, that might be the difference between us accepting it and not accepting it. So oftentimes, I think there is a lot of care, I think, with how we also communicate with authors in those instances, because we do get so many submissions, we do, just as a function of, being able to protect our time and make sure we get through everything, we do have to send automated replies to the bulk of pieces that we decline. However, if there is something that we really love and just barely doesn't make the cut for some reason, we always make sure to personalize the response to the author and let them know that we really like this. These are the things that we liked about it. It just isn't right for us right now, but please submit to us in the future. So I think, some of those things are kind of interesting to hear about and to learn about when you come on board the journal, because you might not know, as a writer who might be throwing their kind of work out into the void, and you might not ever really know that, sometimes a really wonderful piece that you wrote might get declined for a reason that really doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the piece. It just might just be a kind of coincidental thing why it doesn't get accepted. So I think as Suzanne kind of alluded to before, it is something that is sort of mercurial, that is sort of always changing. But I think that we are always, kind of keeping at our core. We are looking always for original and diverse kind of perspectives in all the genres. So that's a thing that I think we definitely hold true to.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. Well, I think Stephen said everything very eloquently. And Dulani, I don't know if you want to jump in here too, but it is very collaborative. And the platform we use allows the graduate students who are reading and who are genre editors, they put in at least a paragraph for anything they kick forward, and generally more. Probably a single-spaced page, I would say, is average. And they sort of make the argument, this is what I loved about it. This is why I think we should publish it. And then it goes to me, and I often, a lot, I'll send things to Stephen and Keegan and say, help me out here, I'm on the fence. But we don't have an aesthetic. We really try not to have we only do neo-magical realism, or we don't like work that is overly realistic or representative. We just really try to take the best that we get and have a lot of dialogue about even what that means. It's kind of an ongoing education. I know from one of the Pieholes, I won't say whose it was, but my immediate reaction was negative. And wonderful Dulani was kind of writing to me and saying, but maybe, and I went back to it and I realized, yeah, this is right. It's great. I don't know why I wasn't seeing that the first time. So it's not like we could just tell somebody this is exactly what you have to do and we'll accept your work. It's very collaborative, and it's very much about sort of defining the moment at the same time.
I'd like to hear more about Delani, how did you know about that piece, that it was right and you wanted to advocate for it? What did it feel like to advocate for it? What did you learn about yourself in doing that? How that just sounds like a really fascinating moment.
You know, I don't know if I would say I was advocating for it. I sort of explained my thought process around it a little bit. So in soliciting work, there were times where I was given folks checking in with me to say I have a draft, and me offering to sort of look at it before passing it on to Suzanne, and being really clear that, you know, it's not a general sort of food essay sort of column. It's very specific to COVID, and so wanting folks to really be thinking about why this, why now, and trying to encourage folks to interrogate that, even if it's connected to, which it often is, to the past, to history, to identity. Um, but being that bridge, the food often is that bridge or that portal for the past and present. And so that was mainly the conversation around, oh, this was my thought process. I gave this feedback, and I thought this scene in particular was really striking, and I wanted them to expand on that. But really, I wasn't wedded to any particular outcome. I think especially because it's really important to have those clear roles when, you know, that if I'm doing the outreach, I'm also clear that Suzanne is the editor-in-chief of the Bellingham Review, and which helps put me in a less awkward position to people I'm soliciting from, honestly.
Yeah, that seems so wonderfully put. Like one key element of resiliency as a kind of resource is not being too wedded to a particular outcome, right? You're putting out effort, but if you get wedded to a particular outcome happening in a particular kind of time, that can kind of close down and constrain creativity rather than opening it. That's what I kind of heard in what you were saying, and it's really wonderful that you're able to develop within the safe container, it sounds like, that the Bellingham Review offers to explore that in various ways. Another question we got that maybe all three of you might have something to say. It's a little bit of a longer question, but it summarizes a number of people that wrote in questions, and from the perspective more of the writer trying to get themselves out there, trying to get noticed, trying to be published, which all three of you are doing in such wonderful and successful ways. And the person writes, how does a writer get their work out there besides submitting directly to the publishers or self-publishing? How does how does the writer think about how their work may be evaluated in terms of where they should be sending stuff out to? How do you find out what kind of established journals you should be sending out to, and should you be doing alternative things in addition to established journals? That kind of summarizes the overall feeling of that question that we've received in different ways. Who would like to start?
I think this would be a good Stephen question, because you've been going through that process for the last 2 years. And so you've been on one side where you're accepting and rejecting people, on the other side where you're sending your work out. And you're right in the thick of both. So why don't you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a huge question. I think that is something that everyone who's trying to put work out there is thinking about. One thing that I have definitely learned, I mean, that I think it kind of connects to something that I said before, is that being on the other side of the journal has taught me as a writer to really, I think it has helped me develop a pretty thick skin about things, to not really take things personally, because oftentimes a rejection has really nothing to do with the quality of a piece per se. It just might be that it is being declined for a number of reasons that you may or may not be privy to, you know, especially at bigger, more established journals. They might not have the time, they literally just not have the time to write you a personalized response, even if your work was considered very closely. So one thing that I have definitely learned is to not take rejection personally, and really instill in your own head that what it really comes down to is that it's a numbers game, and that really you just have to be sending your work out all the time to a variety of different places. You should be reading, you know, different journals and finding ones that you like, that you think that find, you know, it's searching for authors that you really love and see where they've been published, and maybe think about sending your own work to them if you think that your work is similar in some way to someone that you really admire. One thing that I've definitely learned from Suzanne, actually, from a class that I took with her last spring, is the importance of just being very organized about this effort that I'm kind of describing. And one thing that I have taken up doing in the program has been to just have, and it may sound very simple, but I think that oftentimes you don't think about it in this way, but being very professional and having like an Excel spreadsheet. And that's what I now have that I work from, where I have very specific details about each journal that I send it to, what date I sent it, what kind of response I got, if it was a personalized response, what was the name of the editor, what did they have to say about the work. And I think that that is just, you're setting yourself up for success, I think, when you are very organized and professional about that effort. So that way, when you do, you know, down the line decide to send another piece to a journal, if you get rejected and you get a personalized response though from an editor who signs their name, you can then go back in 2 months, find that person in your little spreadsheet and say, you know, you guys really admired this piece. It didn't get accepted, but here's something else that I think you're really going to enjoy. And I think that I've had work accepted with that precise scenario, and there's no possible way I would have had work accepted in that particular way if I had not organized myself in that manner. So I think that that's an incredibly important thing that you need to do as a writer for sure.
Yeah. To add a very quick thing to that, there are extremely concrete and practical things you can do to find the right places to send your work. It's not a mystery, and it's a bit too much for this webinar. But if anybody wants to just email me, I will share with you what I know, because I have written and presented a lot on the publication process, and it's not an enigma. There are really practical steps you can take even before you get to Excel spreadsheet stage to find the right place. So email me, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Delani, what's how have you organized yourself, or are you a compassionate mess and completely disorganized?
I also learned a lot from Suzanne when it comes to this, and one thing that has stayed with me is really thinking about, and Stephen mentioned this too, just where are the writers that you admire being published? Where do you want your work to be in conversation with other work that you admire? Why do you like the journals that you like? And so I think I've had really great experience with knowing that my piece is a great fit for a specific call for submissions or what they're looking for, whether it's a themed issue or a themed section, ongoing section of a particular journal that is maybe looking for hybrid work, or something about ancestors and ghosts, or, you know, there's a place that publishes work by teachers about teaching, where I had a couple short flash pieces accepted. And so knowing really well what your work is and what people are looking for, and where can that match is often what I have felt works really well.
It sounds to me like what you're saying, Delani, is that you do have to have a really kind of both personal but almost not exactly objective, but a little depersonalized view of your own work, like some actual assessment of what it is that I think one gets either in workshopping or by being an editor, by being in this kind of position of being an editor and learning to look at your work differently. So it seems to me one way to get one's work out is to become an editor. Are there editorial opportunities outside of the Bellingham, like Stephen and Dulani, do you see yourselves as continuing to do some kind of editing work in the future? What kind of editing activities can a creative writer get involved with to keep themselves kind of connected and seeing and learning to see work through that lens that you've said is been so important to you?
That's a great question. I will say that, it really depends and varies according to also your career goals and interests. And so I co-edited an anthology 10 years that came out 10 years ago. And that was my first editing experience of soliciting writing, organizing it by theme. That book is called The Revolution Starts at Home. Confronting intimate violence in activist communities. And then, I've also been a reader for Kundiman, which is a national Asian American arts community that has a annual retreat. And so I was asked to be a reader after having gone through that program as a fellow, to read folks applying to be new fellows. And so I think when you're a part of various communities, you're attuned to the different opportunities. People keep you in mind because you show up to events, you're interested, you're engaged in the community. Maybe you yourself teach a workshop here and there. So when people know that you're active and involved, it stands out and things can happen. Often the main thing I think that also stands out to me is that a lot of this is unpaid work. And so it's also just thinking through what you have time and capacity for. So people will be looking for readers and editors, but you have to have your life set up in a way where that's also possible.
Thank you so much. I mean, you beautifully opened for me the kind of contrast between the romanticized sometimes view of the writer as this isolated person kind of producing from the closet versus the idea of writing really being a community activity of occurring within and being distributed through and nurtured by the communities, very identifiable communities that you can be connected with, and creating opportunities for other writers ends up, from what I'm hearing, coming back to one by creating opportunities for oneself, that it's a bi-directional thing. It's not just about getting your work out there, but getting other people in your community's work and voices out there. And it's that communal effort, which is so important. You opened that really well. Steve?
Yeah, and if I could jump in on that, yeah, that was an amazing answer, Dulani. Thank you. It becomes a real, I mean, there's a lot of inflow and outflow, and we develop relationships with our writers, and then there's just a lot of connection formed. Like when we published Sheikha Hilawi, and and then I started sort of trying to yenta her manuscript, and then she visited my class. She visited a graduate class, and she's Bedouin Palestinian writer, not somebody that you would normally be interacting with. And it was just such a great experience, Stephen. If you remember her telling the story about her braid, and in order to get educated, she had to cut off her braid, but that isolated her from the Bedouin community. And so now, I mean, I kind of think of her as one of us. I mean, we could all write to her, we could all invite her to do things. We can get some of just that amazing life experience that she has. I mean, I think that one of the things that has always been my wish for the journal is that it really be a community, and that it's not a one-off. we take your poem, we publish it, we never think about you again. And I think that's something to just be aware of, that there's a lot of inflow to the department and the university in ways that are sort of outside just creating a journal that people can pick up and read or go online and read.
Stephen, what's your take on that?
I mean, yeah, just to build on what everybody said, it is absolutely a community. And I think one of the amazing things that happens when you become part of the review and you're very active with the review is that you do make those connections both with writers and with editors from other journals oftentimes, which is a very cool thing. You know, we do social media exchanges with different editors from different journals where we say, you know, hey, you put up this advertisement for us, we'll put it up for you. Suddenly, you know, the managing editor of that particular journal, or you know, that social media coordinator. So I think that that's a really cool kind of thing that just sort of extends that umbrella, and really that is always just going to be more beneficial to you, whether whether in the world of being a professional editor or just in the world of being a writer. I think that those things are mutually beneficial. I think that is just the bigger that network, the more involved you are in that network, the better chances you are, I think, to kind of make a connection that might mean the difference between getting a job or getting your piece noticed. I think that those things are just so important. Just kind of having those connections and getting to know the people who are out there working, who are doing those editing jobs at major journals, and who are people who are getting the work published at places that you want to have your work published at. One of the things that I did just prior to getting into the MFA program at Western was I did a year-long professional editorial certificate at University of Washington. And I got that particular kind of cohort umbrella now too, to kind of tack on to this one. So like I often find myself now going back on social media and on Instagram, whatever, LinkedIn, whatever the case may be, and just seeing what those people are up to, what jobs they've kind of gotten. People will have little conversations about, oh, I think this person might be great for this job. Oh, you were an excellent copy editor in the program. I bet this would suit you very well. So I think that having that network and making that network as robust as you possibly can make it is only going to be beneficial to you. So it's just a wonderful thing to always expand that in any way that you can.
Yeah, our last year's managing editor now is doing professional editing work and paid editing work. So that happens too. I mean, she connected with a really amazing literary publisher called Horizon, and she's doing a lot of copy editing and editing for them. So that happens.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Well, why don't we close with asking each of you what was your favorite Resilient Piehole submission? Maybe to describe what struck you about it a little bit, whether it was published or not in the particular in the publication.
I can start. I don't know if I'm going to be stealing Stephen's too. I think I am. So you can pick your second favorite. But I think my favorite is one it's up, so you can find it if you go to our website, is by a Senegalese writer named Marame Guaye. She lives here now in the US. And she has a daughter who was born with a really severe congenital heart problem. I mean, her daughter actually had a stroke soon after she was born. And her health is still fragile. And during COVID, her daughter started a YouTube channel called something like Cooking for Teens. And so she's cooking these Senegalese dishes on her YouTube channel. And her YouTube channel symbol is a heart pierced with a fork and a spoon. It was just sort of the perfect, you sort of wanted to cry, but at the same time, it was a resilient pie hole. And I think that's my favorite so far. I'll let the others jump in on that.
As Suzanne alluded to, that is probably my favorite overall too. But I would say a very close second before we got that one. I really loved a piece by Quincy Scott Jones, Sweet and Spicy Noodles Served Between Paychecks, I believe it's called. And I thought that one was just so beautiful because up until that point, we had mostly gotten, I think that this form, maybe more naturally lends itself to people writing sort of creative nonfiction and giving us like a sort of essay form. And I thought what was really cool about Quincy Scott Jones is that we ended up getting a really beautiful poem from him. And it was just so moving to me. Just on an aesthetic level, it was very beautiful language, just a very beautiful poem, but the content was just so kind of, well, deeply moving and just very sad. And you could kind of just really identify and feel his struggle. He had talked about not just cooking during this kind of crazy time, but also through the lens of also struggling with money, struggling with poverty, and the meal that you might make on a very strict budget. And so I thought that that was just like a very wonderful, moving perspective to kind of get in the mix.
Such a good question. Yeah, I mean, everything that Suzanne and Stephen mentioned, I echo. I think my favorite is Ana Laura's piece. I mentioned it earlier, I believe, but it's called Rice and Sancocho. I think the way that Ana brings in the history of food itself, and thinking through how the food she was using came together through colonization, how sovereign Afro-Indigenous spaces that provided a respite from slavery. These are Anna's words, for so many all over the century, for so many over all of these centuries, and how her own home, her and her partner, have a sovereign Afro-Indigenous space in Oregon. I mean, she just, it's connecting a geopolitical identity and sort of what is happening right now to this sort of larger story of resilience, I think was really amazing to me.
Thank you so much. We had a last minute question about, is it possible to become an editor if you're not a writer? And to that, I would just say a quick resounding yes. I'm sure everyone on the panel would agree. They're really wonderful, wonderful professional editors, agents who aren't writers, who participate in the community as well and are more than welcome. So an email is going to be coming out in the next couple of days once the captioning has been redone with the recording for this, and a thank you for attending, and I'll turn it back over to Dean Paredes.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all our panelists. This was really, really wonderful. Now I feel I'm hungry and I feel very ready to go and read this most current issue, Front to Back. I really appreciate Suzanne, Stephen, Dulani, you sharing your time with us. This is really inspiring. It's a nice break in the middle of the day. I also want to thank the Alumni Association, and in particular Janine, who has been just instrumental in helping us put this together. Thank you to Susanna Glatz as well, who's our administration assistant in the college, who is the magic behind the scenes in these events. And thank you, Mark, for your wonderful facilitation. And with that, right on time at 1 p.m., I wish you all a great day, and I encourage you to be on the lookout for future webinars, for future Western Horizon webinars. Thank you all again, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.